Hey guys, this is Jake with EDC Leather. Real quick, I just wanted to thank Derek and all the people at Illum Atelier for letting us record this week's podcast in person in their studio. Make sure that you check out Illum for all your leatherworking class needs, ranging from beginner to advanced, and make sure to keep a lookout for a new Avenger holster class coming out soon. All these links are going to be in the description. Make sure you check them out. Thank you guys very much, and into the video.
Good morning, everybody. This is George and Derek at EDC Leather, and today we're doing our podcast, our Holster Makers podcast. And this morning we're going to have a ball because I'm actually face-to-face with Eric Larsen of HBE Leather.
Hey guys.
How awesome is that?
It's cool to be here. Thank you.
And Jake is back in Missouri, and probably not out of bed yet, but we have Derek from Illum handling all the work for us.
Yep.
Thank you, Derek. We're not worthy. We're not worthy. Okay. So Eric, you and I have known each other for quite a while, but let's give some people some background. So you started holster making before you could even spell leather, really, didn't you? Because you had some challenges.
I started carrying in the late 80s. I found a CZ-PCR at a pawn shop in the mid-90s. The only holster I could find for it was a 16906 Smith without a body shield, and the decocker. Actually, I have a scar from it. Let's put it that way.
I cut you?
Yeah, no, the decocker's really sharp. So one day I came home. I was a salesman. I got off the road and came home and cut apart 40 holsters that I had in my drawer. My dad was a mechanical engineer, so he taught me a little bit about this and that. So I cut them apart, started making blueprints of what I liked about each holster.
Of each one?
Of each one. There'd be one aspect of this inside the waistband. There'd be one aspect of this outside the waistband. And I tried to meld as many of the positives as I could. And I took a print, rough as hell, to a local shoe repair shop in Bountiful where I lived, and had Scott, the guy that did the shoe repair,
yes,
make this. And he didn't know anything about holsters, neither did I. He made it out of upholstery leather, stitched it, and I went to Tandy and got a couple of square feet of just black, thin upholstery leather like you'd make a bomber jacket out of, or
okay,
put over a couch. I didn't know what I was doing, obviously. The first holster, to get it to take a set, I literally got it wet and molded it for probably between 8 and 10 hours total. But it took a set. Finally,
it actually
it
held
did.
shape?
It did. So a friend of mine named Kevin owned the CZ forum back then. And because it was a CZ PCR, I'd gotten in touch with him and was a member of the forum. And I sent him a picture of it, and it kind of took over that part of the forum. But here's the weird part. Lou Alessi sent me an email and said...
And of course, at this point, you really didn't know who Lou Alessi was?
I had heard.
Or did you?
I had an idea.
Really?
Okay, yeah. His talent was really popular back then. And so I'd heard the name, but I didn't know who he was. But he sent me an email and said, "Is this upholstery leather?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Is it hard?" And I said, "Yeah." And he asked me how long it took and how many I had done like that, which I'd probably done a dozen by then. And he said, "You know what, I get all kinds of requests from beginning makers all the time that I really don't want to play with." But he said, "With your determination, and I like the design, if you have any questions, feel free to call me." He says, "Here's one thing, okay? Go find some veg tan." And I
try this. Went back to Tandy, did you?
I went to Tandy. I got some crappy whatever oak,
oak
leather,
of the
leather
month
they had, and I was like, I thought this is, oh my
this is
God,
the Holy Grail.
half an hour of molding instead of, but anyway, that's how all this.
The
shit.
salesman didn't show me this last time. Woo!
I should have asked. Even the guys at Tandy would have said, "You know what? You're a moron. Try this." But you know what? it was a blessing in disguise, because if I'd done them out of veg tan, no little lessee.
You wouldn't
No.
have thought about you.
No, so I actually talked with Lou one-on-one. I mailed him holsters. You got to remember, guys, back in, the late 90s, AOL was still the internet.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I was the stuff, because you had the 56.6, right?
Right.
So anyway, I worked with Lou on design and emails and phone calls and mailing holsters back and forth, and then he referred me to one of his main trainees. I won't mention his name. He's kind of shy and kind of uptight, but he's still a friend of mine, the guy I'm talking about. And I mean, there was no internet, there was no social media, there was no FaceTime. The guys now, you're so spoiled. Okay, you've been in the leather business your entire life.
That's I grew up.
Your family for generations.
There wasn't any choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a kid. You're in the shop.
And see, I kind of did. My grandpa made his own saddles, and I never really had a background in holsters. But what I think honestly helped me is my dad was a Class 3 automatic weapons dealer. He sold to like local law enforcement and stuff,
Right.
my whole life. So I ate, slept and drank guns at my dad's house. That's all, that and cars.
That and the law enforcement community and all that.
Yeah,
So you were
yeah.
surrounded by a gun culture even at that age.
So I understood firearms, and that really helped. I know a lot of leather workers that are premier saddle makers or great Western holster makers, but they just don't really get what goes into.
They're not retention guys, and they're not everyday carry guys.
Into concealment leather.
Correct.
The guy I'm talking about that Lou handed me off to 20 years ago said, look into anatomy classes. You've got to look at what blood vessels, you're going to be pressing on, what nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you can do about them. And it's, God, there's just so much that goes into this that a lot of makers don't really consider.
Eric's one of my, I have several science nerd holster maker friends, and we will do really stupid shit to try to get an insight into what's going on. Remember when I told you we took and put on the black, the Lycra suits or whatever, and put reflective tabs on the wrists and the knuckles and the elbows?
For motion.
And then we sit there and started drawing, and then there was a little program that you could get off of Microsoft, and it was for the guys that called the plays on football, so they could, the guy runs here, the guy runs there, and we're using that to connect the dots in the video and see. And then I believe you saw when we were doing a holster fitment yesterday, and you were seeing how people are slamming their whole bodies one way or the other, and to try to reduce that. And the person that's getting out of shape drawing a firearm from a holster, if we put the holster in the right location where the draw becomes natural, they're not going to be all over the place.
No.
The only time you see them rocking forward or leaning away or leaning that is when we have placed a holster on their body
where it
does not belong for that person. And some of that, yes, you can train out if it's a necessity. Okay, but the reality is
they shouldn't have to.
Let's start where their body works.
You got it.
You just talked about, earlier today, a long torso, short legs. I think it's actually easier for me to fit. A guy I had in here yesterday in studio, I don't know what his legs are. He had waist up to here, his arms went down almost to his knees,
Built like me.
and a short torso.
Get it as low as you can.
You're so limited. You're so limited. So he was interested in one of these rigs right here, and it's not going to work for him.
Nope.
But I think a pancake and I put on him, and I drove it down because I had it set at mid-ride. And I said, so if I take you from a 1-inch grip clearance, he was a tall, slender guy, let's take you down to 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to gain a 1/4 inch right there. Which, guys, that sounds like a little bit here, but in the draw, that's a mile.
Oh yeah, it's huge. If you've got sausage fingers, that's one of my standard questions. When it comes to, if I talk to the, I've got my process when a client calls me.
Right.
Okay? The two main sects of my clientele are newbies that have no clue, that are smart enough to call me, and we go through the 50 questions or whatever they are. And then the guys that know exactly what they want and they can't find it anywhere.
Right.
Okay, those are my two biggest
Right.
sects. But if you go through 20 questions and you've come to the conclusion the guy's built like me and he needs a low ride holster as low as he can get, my next question is, do you have sausage fingers? And because
You're trying to find, where can I buy room?
all the information you can get is helpful.
So we end up, I had a pancake here, slapped it on him. The pancake was also a mid-ride, so I just grabbed his belt and I pulled it down a little bit, so this would be where I was. And he went from rocking his body to when he drew the firearm, it sounded like this. Yep. Just click. Yep. And that's what it sounded like. And that meant that he wasn't forcing that firearm along a longer path. And he's like, holy smokes, that works.
And some pancakes, if you do it right, it'll pull that loop in, and it'll give you more clearance. So, one thing I do is we have the same rule for slots, less than an inch.
Yep, I do center,
yeah.
From the center of the slot, inch on the slide side.
On the forward side,
Okay.
you can give yourself more room.
On the back side, I actually play around with a little bit, okay? And let's say a striker fired, half inch.
Cool.
If you're dealing with like this here, these big chunky
Yep.
trigger guards, I want to say pretty much that same inch to center. Okay, but now let's go to a 1911, a J-frame, a Browning, something with a 3/8 inch CZ with a 3/8 inch or a quarter inch.
Yeah.
Here, why not bring that in a little bit?
Dude, some of mine are half inch from the stitch line.
Now, but there's another thing I want you to think about, and I'm going to show you this here, but it doesn't relate to the real gun. You got to play with the real gun with it loaded, okay? Or you don't have to have one chamber, but you need to have a full mag, okay? But most firearms are set, and it won't balance here, but if you put your two fingers right over the ejection mag, it's going to line out like that. Most of the striker fireds do that, okay? So that means I want you as close as you can in your design from the distance from here to the slot. Replicate that distance here. You may end up with a slot way out here on this, okay? And that may not be a good thing. Everything we do is a trade-off.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But if I can get this point here as close to center of those two deals, I've reduced the perceived weight. Now watch what happens if I go to, like, let's say an 8 to 10 degree cant. Now I've shortened this distance quite a bit, and I'm going to start moving my finger around again to find where does it balance with the mag at that angle. And I may be down into here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I may be actually dropping down into this area right here. So I'm finding that's not true CG, it's what we call perceived center of gravity. Okay, so I try to find that, and as close as I can get that to center of the slots, the less perceived weight the fellow's going to have. But understand that is, this kind of stuff is what we call brain candy as designers.
Yeah.
It may or may not have anything to do with any reasonable way to design a holster, but it gets you thinking.
It does. It does. If it does have an effect, it's not all the time, and it varies to the amount that it does affect it. You know what I mean? See, center of gravity. I mean, here's a standard inside the waistband. That's centered. It's more centered, okay? It's centered enough.
It's right on the frame.
Now here is an offset loop holster, not centered. And you have to think about how that's going to affect the carry,
I do a little bit better with that too, though, when I can have even a little bit more cant to the firearm. This just catches the edge, and that kind of, it's split like the seat teeter-totter.
Yeah, the advantage of this for strong side is it'll fall forward to a point. If it does, and it'll stop.
Yep.
And it's not enough, it doesn't affect the carry location, the guy's draw, his muscle memory.
And by the way, guys, JRM.
JRM, Marianne, love you. Always have, my dear.
And if you're not a guy that wants to buy 100 or 1,000 of them, I think we keep them on the site as well.
Yeah.
For the guy that needs just 10.
JRM Clips in New Jersey, small family-owned business.
American made.
Way.
And sometimes when there's delays, it's not because they're waiting on a boat from China. It's because the powder coat guy is
they're having problems with tempering. Yeah.
So it's all, they do it there. There's nothing being sent out of the country. So it's a great way to support American holsters and American craftsmen.
These?
Actually, I want to go and talk about this a little bit more first. So let's break into, so you started there, you got to use the right leather, you had some good training, now you're starting to feel good. But what brought you to the attention of customers, of clients? Did you end up like in an article or something on a magazine, or how did that work?
Do you know what? I've had write-ups in American Handgunner, Guns and Ammo, Soldier of Fortune, Concealed Carry Magazine, USCCA Online, Tim. He loved my holsters. And the amazing thing is every review I've got has been really good. I've had I had one guy on YouTube that didn't like the color of the holster I made him, and that's the only public comment I've got.
You should have told him, said, I'm colorblind, sorry.
But
was that a green holster?
No. Here's the amazing thing, okay? With like American Handgunner and Guns and Ammo, great write-ups, pictures of the holster, and I think I got 6 orders total.
But those orders, it's sticky. That kind of stuff when it's the write-up, so those magazines stick around, they get sold in the yard sale, somebody else reads it. Hey, I wonder if that guy, you can't tell how many times it comes back.
I don't know. The first time I'm waiting for the phone to ring, like it's on my coffee table, and I'm, come on, it's a great review, and it is what it is.
We got to be on a magazine, and I think it really made a difference for us.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
So and I was feeling particularly handsome that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lucky.
So
lucky.
You grew your business then at that point, and you're still growing a business pre-internet era.
Yeah. You know what? How I spent the first 5 years off the internet. The only thing I did was get on the CZ forum and chat with Kevin, and I kind of became one of the holster guys on the CZ forum.
I know a lot of guys that have leveraged forums. It's not Facebook, forums, searchable,
BBCs,
history,
digital bulletin boards.
And they've done huge for them.
Okay. The first 3, 4, 5 years, I wanted to get better at my craft. So I cashed in my retirement. I bought 2 of the stitchers we were talking about yesterday.
The FAFs?
No.
Or jump foots?
No, there was a company out of California. I don't remember the name. Anyway, they take Japanese machines and leatherize them like fur coat or Cowboy does now. But they were, so I spent $5,000 on a Japanese 400 series stitcher, triple feed, and bought everything I thought I needed. And this was after a year of having the shoe guy do my stitching for me.
And which is, now that's something to be aware of, guys. Most leather shops or leather businesses, if you don't have your stitchers yet, you're still working on your designs, they'll stitch for you for about $5 a job.
Yeah, you know what? You should, if you can't find a shoe repair guy that'll do it, call your local leather store.
He'll do it.
And either they'll do it or they'll know somebody that can.
Yeah, and I mean, even like right now, about 8 or 9 years ago, we had a stitcher go down hard, ship it back. And of course, we're in production at that point. And Springfield Leather said, bring them over in totes, $5 a piece.
Cool.
And I mean, we took over 2 pickup loads, and they put a gal just sitting there doing nothing but stitching her stuff. Yeah. And that'll quickly make you realize that it's a good deal to own your own stitchers.
Big time.
And then we also discovered sometimes you have to have 2 to make sure that you have 1.
Yeah, you know what?
Because when it goes down hard, you're done.
I've my stitcher, man. I went from a giant harness stitcher, a 400 series, Artisan. Artisan was the company, okay. $4,000 in the late 90s or around 2000. I didn't like it, so I actually sold it, bought a little tabletop, kind of like a Juki 541. Okay. A little heavy industrial stitcher.
207, you do 207.
Yeah, 207 RB, okay, same thing, but triple feed, they'd modified the height, takes big thread. I mean, Artisan did a great job. Still a Japanese machine. I used it for a while, but it was even with all the alterations, it was maxing out on thread. So I tried a couple other machines. I mean, I bought a...
Oh, you bought one of the little Boss?
Yeah, I bought a Boss. And the guy I bought it from said, look, each one is finicky in its own way. They'll go out of time, or the bottom tension won't stay in, or the handle comes loose, or each one has its little idiosyncrasies. And mine, I think, had all of them combined.
Okay, so 4 or 5 people got one that was perfect, and you took the child that had taken on all the sins of the others.
Now I know why I got a deal on it, But I used it for a while. I ended up calling Ryan at Neil's Saddlery, which is now Cowboy.
And it's still Neil's Saddlery, but not only does he owns Cowboy, he brought the Texo line in to America as well under his aegis. Okay, the splitter the Randall splitter that was the big long one, you had the adjustments on each side. Yeah. They're making that too for cheaper than the Cobra. We still go with Cobra with the leather machine company because the blade exchange.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I mail it back.
Cobra and Cowboy are very similar companies. They're both extremely...
Except for the 3200 stitcher by Cowboy. Ryan wrote that stitcher from the ground up.
Wow.
That's his.
See, mine, believe it or not, I had 3 triple feed machines, okay, in my process. And I do a lot of circling around.
Well, Alessi,
Yeah.
He used to stitch his Stadburn and L into his holsters.
Yeah, you can't get away from what you were taught anyway. I didn't like that I couldn't control where my stitches would end up when I was coming back around. So I got a Neil Saddlery, I think it's called a number 5, which is not a 500 series. It's like a 2000 series. It's a 328 needle size instead of a 794. It's almost as heavy. But
that may be what turned into the 3200 series.
No, the 32 is a miniature 4500. It's triple feed.
That's his 3400.
Okay, so the 32 is
the
just
32 is, and I've not actually looked at it, but Ryan's talked to me extensively. Due to that, I suggested to a couple of guys. They said, "Sure, I'm going to try it." And there's a huge love fest following this machine. Dude, so on the Cobras, or the Artisans, or even the Cowboys of the 400. Ferdco is actually, now that's their Pro 2000 is not a compound feed with the feed dogs anymore. It's a jumping foot needle feed, and we're talking right now. Lowell Harvey and I, and another investor, because I'm poor. We're talking to Ferdco, and we're looking at becoming a Ferdco distributor at my shop. So
cool.
I'm excited.
Dude, Ferdco made in Idaho, or I think, isn't it Idaho based?
Chicago's where we're dealing with as far as offices.
Back when it started.
Okay.
Back, in the 90s, 2000s, it was based in Idaho.
Yeah,
but I think I could be wrong.
But even the Class 3s and Class 4s, like you go to the verse, you got to really watch that needle getting back in the right hole.
Yeah.
On the 3200, you don't. He resolved that issue.
That's what I loved, and I modified the machine. There's a very solid local sewing machine shop called Danes here. In fact, it's about 3 minutes around the corner from here.
Okay.
I had their tech come over, and we modified the foot height, so it'd actually go up an inch and still put pressure on 8-ounce leather if I want it to.
Fantastic.
We modded the Neil Satterley number 5, and God, it's just been bulletproof.
And now it works every day.
I've had this thing since 2002 or 3.
No, something that I've tried to express to guys a lot of times when they call me up, they're like,
It won't die.
"Hey George, I want to be the best at making holsters. I want to be the best that I can. I want to go on." And I stop and say, "Hey, what stitcher do you have?" I don't care what stitcher they have. I want them to say if they have a stitcher. No, I hand stitch, and I tell them, "You're done as a designer."
Yeah.
You could run an entire business doing holsters, never owning a sewing machine. But the minute you're going to design, and you put your heart and soul into this, and up until the last minute, now you put all this additional time stitching, and then you find out that it's not right. It tears a little bit of your soul out to go start again, and you're putting too much importance on 5 minutes to hold that thing together, which is all stitching should be, okay, into it's taking up more of their mind and their soul than their actual designing.
Oh,
do you see what I'm saying? The importance of a stitcher to a designer?
Oh, yeah, no, and it's so hard on your body, let alone the time,
You need to be able to throw it away if
hand
it's not right.
stitching. I can do a double saddle pretty good, but I never did that much hand stitching,
No time.
It was just tedious to me,
But I do have guys that they get into their zen doing that.
Yeah.
And I think in holster construction, if your zen is hand stitching, go for it. Okay?
Yeah.
In holster design, where you need to be able to rapidly put something together, look at it and say yay, nay, throw it away, start over again, I think you're killed without a stitcher.
Yeah, I agree.
It took you so much of your soul to get to that point that you don't want to say, bad puppy, cut it in half.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of cutting holsters in half, I believe you had a story about that.
Yeah. I love this. My main mentor is still a good friend of mine. He's kind of an uptight, ornery kind of guy, but we love him. I sent him what I was like grasshopper and master to him. Okay, in fact, he called me grasshopper, believe it or not. But I always wanted to be. I mean, this is back when I was insecure and still trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to holsters.
We all do.
Okay, yeah,
we all do.
Yeah. So I make what I think is the best holster I've ever made. It was a Com 3. It was like this, but a little bigger for a semi-automatic, and it was 17 or 18 years ago. And I sent it to him, mail, and said, "This is the best holster ever. What do you think?" And he cut it in 3 pieces with a bandsaw and sent it back to me and said, "Keep trying, grasshopper."
Keep trying, grasshopper.
And I didn't call him for a year, dude. I was so pissed. But after we talked, he said it actually probably was one of the best holsters that I had made. But he had to keep that ego in check.
Yeah, keep the ego in check.
And he thought that was a good way to do it. So anyway.
That is awesome. I want to take a minute here to look at some of the holsters you're currently making and talk through them. So let's get ready to do that. All right, so Eric, let's take a look at some of the IWBs that you built, because that's where I really know you from, is inside the waistband. So what do we got here behind you? We got a bunch of stuff happening.
Okay, we've got some stacked loop designs. This is called my Pro Slim.
And they're a stacked loop because here's your example. Talk about.
They are stacked loop because whether you've got a single spring clip, 2, spread out snap loops like a standard summer special or a wide sewn loop, the belt attachment is directly over the body and slide of the gun. So it's stacked.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with Bob's House of Leather or Del Fatti or EDC or me, you're only going to get 2 flavors of inside the waistband, guys. Stacked loop or offset, okay? This has 2 clips that are offset away from the body of the gun.
Okay. Stack loop, offset
Stack loop, offset. Offset can be 2 spring clips. It can be 2 snap loops. It can be a single spring clip or a single offset loop.
Be a single offset loop.
Yeah.
So we're going to call it a loop no matter what style of attachment you're using, be it leather, be it snap. Sewn loops, just like the snap leather soft loop, you can go ahead and sew those at the top, and they're still pretty doggone popular.
Yeah. Sewn loops, I make sewn loops so tight on the belt because that's the, anyway.
That's it, and it's gonna have some give a little bit later too. It's gonna be perfect.
It is gonna stretch out.
We're still breaking in leather. It's not dead dinosaurs. It's not Kydex. We're going to break it in. Now, what about some of the Kydex, like the foamy clips? I believe you can use those as well, can't you?
You can. Yeah, I have designs.
You're supporting it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's well supported as stack loop design.
Yep. I have designs. I've got a local guy that, in fact, he owns Crown Pawn Shop. He buys Blade Tech, clips, and I designed a holster around them. And you know what? It's kind of an underground biggest seller I've got for.
Yeah, for us on that deal is that discrete carry concepts double clip.
These clips. Discrete.
That's one of them they have, but they also have one that's just got two chains that come down. I love those. What we've done on our summer specials and our attachment points, I've standardized to the 2 holes on the discrete carry so that when we put T-nuts and bolts on for a summer special on a double loop, it matches. So now the client can say, I would prefer this. $8 adder, we bolt that on for him.
Here is one of my pet peeves, okay? A standard summer special, the old school summer special, if you see them, the loops are actually part of the mouth band.
Yeah, and well, in the very first one that I saw, there was no mouth band.
Yeah, okay.
And it was cross draw, and he built the mouth up larger and rolled it over. And that was kind of cool.
The Nelson #1 was
the #1 professional,
yeah. What people consider the first Askins, even though it didn't have a banded mouth. And it wasn't a strong side, but what we consider the Askins. Anyway, the first dozen summer specials I made, I copied that because I didn't know any better. And then I had a farmer or a rancher that got his loop caught on barbed wire, and it cut about 2/3 of the way through, and we had to toss the holster.
One piece.
Yeah,
and what we're talking about, guys, is on this holster, and I'll do it here, okay? In a lot of these stack loops or whatever, you'll see they'll put a band, then they'll stitch a piece of leather that has loops that would come down and would come up over. What we did is more like the old Western holster where the back of the holster comes up, then goes over, and you put it on your belt. We did the same thing here. We came up, one piece of leather, continued up, then we dropped that over and snapped it. And it looked kind of cool to put together. It's extremely wasteful leather, and we did not gain any structure in doing it.
Yeah.
But it sure looked cool that when you were first cutting it out.
You know what?
In 1984, it was awesome.
You discovered a way that you didn't want to make holsters.
Right.
Just like Edison said, you've had 1,000 failures, and he said, no, I found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Right. Right.
So.
But that brings us to what we were talking about earlier: the difference between a holster designer and a holster maker. And I'm going to tell you what, guys. You guys that want to decide you're going to start out as a holster maker, you're going to do a lot better overall in this business over the years than a straight designer, because we go down a lot of rabbit holes and we waste a lot of years.
Yeah.
And a guy that starts as a maker and then he makes it for a while, he gets into the designer's head, and then he says, I could do better if I changed this. And he makes a mod. Then 2 months later, you know how it goes.
He does.
What if I change this? By a year and a half later, it's a completely different holster. It's usually pretty doggone amazing because he's fixing perceived problems.
Well, and you know what? In that, he doesn't know it, but he's growing, and he's starting to understand. See, that's what I loved about the way I was raised. I understand how guns function. I understand what people need when they carry. I understand the mechanics of a draw. You said here's what I did, 20 years ago. You did your dots.
We were videoing.
You did your dots on the camera, on the wetsuit. We took a video camera out in the desert with 3 of the Bianchi rotational, the ratchet.
Yes.
Inside the waistbands. I think it's a model 15. I don't remember.
I have one hanging on the wall.
Okay, don't quote me. But it's an inside
Don't buy one. They have issues.
It's an inside the waistband that you can rotate 360 degrees and it just ratchets. It goes don't. We took video with a 3, 4, and a 5-inch 1911 and a snubby from different carry locations on the body, and we analyzed what was a natural draw. You know, we asked each.
We looked for bone lock.
We brought 3 guys out and we ran 50 different draw scenarios with all the guns and all the holsters from all kinds of carry locations. And that's how I still use as a baseline for figuring out what can't. You know, the 3 things for me that affect can't are muzzle length, body type, and carry location. Holster type has a little bit to do with it. Once, and you know, if you get some funky design.
There was something you expressed to me probably 15 years ago, and I made one little change to it, and it's just a word change. But at the time it was CACC. Now we call it CADC or CADC. Okay.
Discrete carry.
And right, because you and I were talking about we're trying to promote the use of levels of discretion as opposed to concealment, just so that we get people thinking about what discretion is to them. But, and this is something that, you know, I wrote down. I said, you know, I called you the next day. I got a pencil now. Let's write it down. So as a designer, here's what's important and the steps that I go through every single time. Comfort. If it's not comfortable, what happens there?
You're not going to use it.
And if you're not going to use it, why buy it? Comfort. Okay.
Function.
Accessibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you cannot access the firearm from the holster,
you're going to die.
So where should the holster side? In the gun safe.
Yep.
Okay.
In the drawer.
Discretion. Okay.
Yep.
What level of discretion do you need? Now you've got. We know that in most cases.
3.
That
generally.
When we go IWB, we're going to call that like that. We've already stepped into level 1 discretion.
Well,
okay.
Or even
over at OWB. So we say OWB is level 0.
Yeah.
Which you use your clothing to conceal. Okay. Yeah. Now we're going to move into an IWB, which we have a lot of it inside of the pants.
Yep.
Level 1 discretion.
Yep.
You agree?
Yep, sure.
Okay. Then we're going to go through all these. Still a level 1 discretion, right?
Yep.
All right. But now let's look at something really interesting. Got 2 examples of it. Yep. And we're going to go to a tuckable holster. All right, Eric, talk us through this double offset tuckable holster.
This is
going to be a level 2 discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah, level 2.
Or deeper. This is a standard. I call it a DC special. DC stands for Dairy Creek, which was actually a guy that helped me design it about 15 or 20 years ago, 15, 18. But a lot of guys think DC stands for dual clip, so I just kind of run with that. But this, if you look at this holster, this is called a DC special. This is a DC tuckable. The only difference between these is...
And I'll hold this for you.
The loops are sewn into the holster for rigidity and strength and stability.
They have a pocket they go into.
Yeah, and they are strong. But this, the only point these attach are at the bottom, so you can actually tuck your shirt in.
I can go with my shirt in between here and here, and this is just over the belt.
And you know what? A lot of tuckables only give you a 1/2 inch to an inch to tuck in. This is a full 2 inches, which if you've ever tucked in and you've had your shirt pull out and show your firearm.
Or you got a shirt that's fairly well into this big wad, and then...
Yeah. But on these discrete carry clips, I've actually got a short one that goes under the belt.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn that around.
It's completely hidden. So.
Oh, so you do the one that goes under the belt and then hooks up underneath?
No, I hate J-hooks.
Okay, so how are you doing that?
It's just this version, but it's only about this long. So even if you've got a 1-inch dress belt, it's still small enough that you put it under your belt over the pants, and the belt covers it.
Outstanding, outstanding.
Yeah, for a tuckable holster, it's all about discretion, baby. You know, if I do make DC tuckables with these spring clips, okay, because these are more user-friendly than these. These go over the belt, which adds more security. Okay?
Which is more like this format right here.
Exactly.
In which, now here you've created a pocket.
Yep.
And that looks like
1.5 inches.
6'6" leather here.
Yeah.
And then this is 5'6" here, so we're staying pretty slim.
Yeah.
Okay. But now you've stitched it down here at the bottom.
It's glued, stitched, and screwed.
There it is right there. I see it.
One of the problems, I bought a G holster. I won't say the name of it, okay? But they used Kevlar thread, and it had this really bitchin' clip, and it was made out of horsehide, and it cost me $120, okay? And
Back when?
10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
Boo, my daughter was probably 14. She grabs it and picks it up and starts doing this to the clip. And she says, Dad, this isn't going to work. And I got it, and it took me all of this to rip the clip off of it. Okay? Kevlar thread. Ooh. So I learned right then that if I'm going to make a tuckable holster, I'm going to make it as strong as I can, period. So this design, the clip is actually glued, stitched, and Chicago screwed through not only the clip, but 4 layers of leather. And
outstanding.
So, yeah.
But now look how much, I've still got almost 2 inches of tuck there. So this would be our level 2 discretion, okay? And then the final thing is cant. Oftentimes cant is determined by the prior 3 statements. You're working to find it every way. So when I design, I'm designing what I call the CAD-C principle of comfort, accessibility, discretion, and then cant. And cant is not so much for the customer deal, but it's to keep it in my head that everything I do in designing a holster, I'm dealing with what I call design compromises. The optimal would be is that it magically holds itself in place in the right location, and it magically moves itself whenever I want to sit down or whatever. And so I need, and since that's not going to happen, I've got to work with the design as much as I can and limit the bad things and try to enhance the good things.
And make it work. Yeah, I've got one holster design that goes from 430 strong side to 11 o'clock appendix, and it works the same in all regards. And it's the only holster I've ever seen that does that, and it's only because the clip
gives room for you to work the belt back and forth a little bit.
And it's strong enough. JRM makes the clip strong enough that if I put this vertically in the front, it stays. Right. If I put it strong side and put 20 degrees on it, it stays.
So we got something really exciting on this. We just really kind of finalized it yesterday. And that is, Eric and I are going to kind of enter into a partnership on a project. He's going to start sending me some of his patterns. We're going to try to do what we do to make multi-fits for click and ships, send it back to you.
Yep.
You're going to test it.
Yep.
Okay, because it's still going to be your name. And we're going to put click and ships out of HBE leathers inside the waistbands, and they're going to come on one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay, and you'll be able to get patterns, clicks,
leather, clips,
leather,
hardware,
everything like that. There's some differences in leather. Let's cover that real quick.
Yes.
Grab this, and you molded one of these yesterday.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the differences in the leather and why we need rigidity and structure here, and where we can gain it from the design and carry location there.
Yeah. Outside the waistband holsters, the only thing that keeps the gun in the holster is the holster, period, okay? That's it. The only thing that affects the function of the holster is the holster, okay? The retention, the stability, everything about that. So all of that has to be built into this holster, and your holsters and my holsters have to last 20 years, okay, of daily use, okay? That if you can't do that, then redo what you're doing. Anyway.
And you know the lengths we've gone through to actually develop this leather.
Sure.
And it's now after you've molded it, like you molded our holster prep 2 or 3 times now. It's a little different, isn't it?
He uses 8 to 8.5 ounce Herman oak, which is it's solid hide and it's perfect for his application. Okay?
And then we have it go through the holster prep process to make it even tougher.
Yeah.
And that's when you're being a lazy designer and you're like, I'm tired. I'm not going to, I want somebody else to help me improve my holster. So I go back to the leather and I start there. And then I get back to work and start there. So we end up with a unique deal, but this leather, we ask a lot of it.
Yeah. Any outside the waistband holster, I mean, if you're carrying a C-Camp or a Kel-Tec P380 outside the waistband, okay, forget we're even having this conversation. But if you're carrying a Glock 17 or a CZ75 or a high power or a 1911, a Commander or a full size, or anything that has any weight, okay, you need a gun belt, okay, we won't get into gun belts now.
There's a lot of good gun belts out there. You find the one that does the best job for you.
But the holster itself has to maintain the physical integrity that it needs to function. And you have to make it heavier. You have to use dense leather to begin with, no matter what holster you're making. You've got to use heavier leather. You've got to use a little different molding, a little deeper. But for inside the waistband, I've talked with 24 makers over the years, and we've kind of ballparked it. We would say that at least 50% of the retention of the gun inside the holster is applied by the belt and the pants. Okay, so therefore this holster has to retain 50% as much as this holster to function the same for the same amount of time as well. Okay, so that's why I use a lot of Herman Oak. I use a lot of USA Premium Zach White Steerhide. Okay, and I've had Pro TLs, functioning every day with clients for 15 years that are made out of 5-ounce Steerhide.
Yeah, 5 to 6 ounces, all you need to go.
Yep, and if you can hear that, folks, if you're making inside the waistband or outside the waistband holsters and they're not that hard, you're using using the wrong hide. You're not molding well enough, and you really have to see these to believe how thin they can be. This holster is...
This is one of them that I think we were talking about. We want to bring on first, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. This is called my Standard Pro. This is the same as a Pro Slim, but this has a fully banded mouth for a little more rigidity, and Illum, Derek, and George have so graciously set it up, I'm actually going to be teaching an inside the waistband holster class.
Awesome. So it's going to be part of the Illum curriculum.
Family. Yeah, I'm going to be part of the family.
How awesome is that?
It's good.
And they have a lady down in Louisiana that is a professional in education, and she takes it. So you and I both made YouTube videos, right? We're making one right now, okay?
Yeah.
But when this lady gets a hold of it, it turns from that into a curriculum, a college-level curriculum, and it just keeps everything going. So we're going to have an IWB by Eric Larsen class. What are you going to be teaching? Are you going to try to do all of them here, or what are we going to do?
Okay. After conversations with you and a lot of thought, I'm going to stick with stacked loop designs to start off with.
Okay.
They're very popular. They're very versatile. They're a little easier to make than a double offset loop or a single offset loop, and you can't go wrong. It's kind of like a Swiss Army inside the waistband holster.
Right. So what we're going to make sure that we do is in the show notes, or the more info here on YouTube. Illum has a social media aspect to it. There's no cost associated. So if they want to start, they can join there. They've got my classes on there already, but if they're signed up onto that page, they'll get notifications or see when your classes are going to become available. Yeah. So how outstanding is that? I mean, that's going to be awesome.
I'm excited. You know what? I like the feedback that I've had. I've been doing this 25 years. A low estimate is I've probably made 20,000 plus pieces of gun leather in that time. That's 3 a day for a year, continually, for 20 years. I had incredible teachers, and I've got a lot of good feedback from all of my clients. I mean, over that time, I've been very blessed, honestly. So I feel very lucky to pass on what my great mentors, I had the best teachers in the world. I mean, I really do, and most of them are still my friends. I can call them anytime, and you know, I mean, Mark Garrity, Matt Delfatti, you know, various people from Boise, Idaho. You know, the guy that I mentioned, Lou Alessi, and tons of other guys. And I've been very blessed to have teachers that have been patient, and they're world-class guys, and I drove them nuts with stupid questions for
Ever?
10 or 15 years. Yeah, I still call them.
I still call you.
Yeah, yeah. I'll have something new happen after 25 years.
I told you about
it still happens.
when we got excited in my shop, and Lowell Harvey and Garrett were working on something, and they got real excited. I mean, I looked around at the computer screens. They're up, and Lowell, this is before he had his last hip surgery. So he's got this one hip that just won't move. And so he got excited. He's moving because that hip wouldn't move. He's going in circles.
Yeah.
And you know, and the one thing he said, man, after this many years of doing that, when something clicks that's new,
Yep.
it's exciting. You know, and go. But I'm excited that you're going to be teaching these stack loop holsters.
Yep.
On the Illum platform. Fantastic. And we talked about mentors and your mentors and stuff, and we met quite a few years ago. Now, although the first time we met physically was last year.
Yeah.
But through the wonders of the internet that we were talking about, we were able to meet, and you were my mentor in a lot of aspects.
Yep.
Okay.
Passing down what was passed to me, man.
And have we been able to do anything that was useful for you?
You know what? You guys and your feedback and asking me, you've got me thinking about a lot of stuff. Yeah, you've helped me out in many ways over the years. So.
Yeah, and now we're making some blue guns.
The whole thing is, you know what? You can teach as many people as you can, and you can be an awesome teacher. But as soon as you become non-teachable, then you might as well be done. And that's one thing that I've tried really, really hard to stay, is open-minded. You know, as soon as
stay teachable, be open to learn.
As soon as I think I've topped out, or I'm the best, or whatever, oh, God help you, you know, so.
And we're trying to set ourselves up at EDC Leather as not a leather supply company, but a belt and holster maker support company.
What you do, I would have killed for 25 years ago, okay? Not just the social media support and FaceTime and all the information that's available to all you know, new or old holster makers. The old ones went through all the stuff we did, so they appreciate the accessibility that we have now. But to be able to go online and spend $30 and get a pancake pattern that's been proven, it's going to work, it's the right weight of leather, it's the right type of leather, it's not upholstery leather. You know, you can get the mouth banded or not. You can have a body shield, you know. And
like were you here when I brought in that new product, which was our click and ship with the patterns and instructions in it?
Yeah.
Well, you look at that puppy.
I like
it. That's going to grow, I think.
It's cool.
It's not on the website yet. Literally, I mocked it up and threw something in the printer, and it kind of went sideways. You know, so we hope to have something really cool coming up, you know, that way. You can't always, not everybody has access to the internet all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so hopefully that's going to resolve some of that. So, man, Eric, I'm excited. We're going to get a class from Illum from you. We got a chance to hang out. You brought me coffee.
I did. Good coffee from Sips and Bountiful, guys.
And Derek, you know, Jake is really easy to get along with as a videographer. Derek's a little spicier. I think he has a bottle of chloroform over there. So I think before we get him too...
That's for you.
Yeah, before we get him too spicy, we're going to sign off here with this. Love you guys, and I will see you next Saturday.
Thank you.